Hello everyone, welcome to the first Lunch and Learn session for ZMed in 2019, 2020. Just make sure, little housekeeping matters first. If we can make sure that everyone's muted their line, if we switch over here to the second panel here, as it says, don't forget to mute your microphone. And see on the right-hand side, you'll see your little toolbar for that, and you'll be able to mute your microphone with that as well. I believe that everyone's muted at the moment. As we go along, if you have any questions, I won't be pausing for the questions, but I have colleagues on the line as well who will be taking down your questions, and we'll be attempting to answer as many of them as possible as we can at the end. But do make sure you add your email address to that as well, just in case we don't manage to get to your question at the end there. Just wait a few more moments. I see we're still getting people coming in. This is intended to be the first of many Lunch and Learn sessions throughout 2020. As we say, the first one's going to be on invoicing and receipts. Just wait a couple more moments for the stragglers. Excellent. I see somebody's got their microphone on. Okay. It looks good. Off again there. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to jump over to ZMed here. Forgive us if it's a little rough around the edges the first time there. We intend to get bigger and better as we go along. So as we said, the first session's on invoicing and receipting. Obviously, there's a wide range of different clinics and practices out there who all have different needs in terms of how they do their billing. So ZMed has to be flexible to compensate for all of those. The standard arrangement what we recommend is using the waiting room, particularly for sites where you have face-to-face encounters. And billing through the waiting room has a number of useful features, including just showing the patients who haven't been billed yet. And also the waiting room can be used by the doctors to send back information about which service items they want to be billed, and also useful extra notes. You can see there's a couple of patients down the bottom here that have had notes passed back from the doctor, and they've also, I happen to know, they've sent back some billing items as well. You can see in this admit column here which particular ones have been admitted through. So what we'll do first, if you make sure everyone's got their microphone switched off there. If we can so what we'll do first is we'll go into a particular patient. Let's say, for instance, open Naomi Watts here. So we'll right click on the patient there, and let's go into bill. So starting from the top here, and we can see, I'll show you just down the bottom to begin with, we can see there's some advice sent back from the doctor here. There's some items sent through, and this is the doctor's billing wizard that we'll be showing in another training session here. And the doctor's also sent back some instructions there, bulk bill, rebook 1 month. This is going to be bulk bill, so up the top here in the paying section, we've got to ensure that we've got Medicare selected there, or DVA if you're doing DVA. So we've got Medicare as one of the options available there. If it wasn't available, we could go to Add Edit Payer on the right-hand side here. Click there, click Add New, and add Medicare or Veterans Affairs if you were sending through to DVA. However, this particular patient has already got Medicare assigned as one of their payers, and you'll only need to add that once to each particular payer. So if we close that there, so select Medicare from there. Obviously, this is a test system, so we don't have real Medicare numbers on any of them there. Okay, that there. Ensure that we've got the correct payer, the correct doctor selected there, and any invoice, sorry, any request, referral if we've got it. Come further down here. So we're adding in the service items. We need to ensure that we've got the correct service date there. And say, for instance, we might put in a service item of 23, for instance. I said, did 23, and then I did a tab to load that in, and you see it's loaded in because it's got the description next to it there. Got to always make sure, double check that the fee type is correct next to it there. You see we've got a fee type of MC available. If you select there, it shows you the different fee types available. You see in this case Medicare schedule, which would be appropriate for a bulk billing. Unless you're a specialist, in which case obviously it'd be Medicare 85%. We just select that there. We can come down here. We can select the properties button here. If there's any particular indication flags that we need to put on this particular invoice, like normal aftercare, multiple procedure, duplicate service, and so on. Speak to your practice manager if you think that some of those might be required. So we can add that one in there, and perhaps let's even add these doctor assigned codes. And click Add All there. Yeah, some surgical operations there, and I'll add those particular values in here. See, one of them's been assigned a value of 0 there, so we can come in, edit that, and put a particular value on it. Perhaps that's not set up in our system at the moment, so we're just doing change and add that there. So that's Medicare. We've checked all of the things there, and we come down the bottom here. We could do suppress, email, or print. Essentially, all of those are the same thing. Suppress will just save it. Print and email will also save it, with the addition that they'll also print off a copy for the patient's record, or even email it. When you suppress it though, it'll be saved in the back of the system, and a designated person, probably your practice manager, will be batching it up and sending it to Medicare overnight. So we just come down and click suppress there. Yes, test system again. We don't have real provider numbers in it. We'll say yes, we want to continue. Next one along there is the, well, more about the private patient though. One thing that we strongly recommend doing when the patients first walk into the clinic is to click Online PV down the bottom here. Online PV will check the Medicare card. Like I say, it's a test system, so we don't have the Medicare cards on these people here. It'll also, if they have an Eclipse fund set up, it'll also check that as well. So quite a useful thing to check online, to click the Online PV button at the very start. That will ensure less difficulties later on when you come to bill and at the last moment find that you've got an invalid Medicare card or it's out of date or something like that. Anyway, if we go back to the waiting room there, so let's pick another one of these patients, perhaps Hugh Jackman here. Let's bill him. So private patient is where the patient is paying all or part of the fee on the day themselves. Once in this particular case, the payer will need to be set to the patient's name. So we'll check on the payer's list here. And yep, Hugh Jackman is on that list there, the patient's name. If the patient wasn't there, you'd head over to the right-hand side here and click Add Edit Payer, then Add New, and click on Patient and select to add the patient's name to the list there. So in this case, they're already there, so let's just pick Hugh Jackman there. We'll work our way down through the list again. So we've got Dr. George Costanza. Any referral that's required, there's a referral. And come down and putting the items in here. So in this particular case, maybe we'll put, let's see, a 23, for instance. Make sure that the fee is correct. Again, in this particular case, it says P1. P1's one of the codes assigned to private doctor's fees. We can double check what it is by clicking on that section. And you'll see it says the private fee for Dr. Costanza. In this particular case, let's see, let's make sure the doctor is Dr. Costanza there, because obviously we'd want them to pay the right fees. We can come down the bottom. Once again, we can do any properties. You can even type in the notes here, a particular body part that might be relevant to that service. We could say left arm, for instance, and add that in there as well. Come all the way down the bottom. Now, the patient is going to be paying some of them themselves, so we're going to be going to quick pay. Some people will be tempted to click on MA Online to send that directly through to Medicare. However, if you do that, it'll be sent through to Medicare unpaid. So what we're going to do first is we'll click on Quick Pay. This gives us the option on this screen here to put the patient's payment in. So as you can see up at the top here, we're choosing how much. We can either pay just the full price for this invoice, or the doctors may have a discounted value set up in the system, or the patient may want to just pay, well, you may have it set up so the patient can just pay a GAB. So we select the payment method, say FPOS for instance, and you see it's already defaulting to the amount of this particular invoice. Let's add that in there. And you see also down the bottom here, we do have the option to, by default, it'll assume we're just paying for this particular invoice, but the patient may have other fees outstanding, so we could potentially click on this one to show the other fees required for this patient, or perhaps they're part of a family group in ZMed and they have even more fees, and that will show there as well. But in this specific case, we're just paying the $50 for this one invoice. Now, if we go down the bottom here, what you would want to do is you'd now want to press MA Online to send it through to Medicare. And the practice manager, this is a test system thing, the practice manager or the designated person will be getting that processed overnight. Yep, send. There we go. Close that one there. Right, next one along there. You may have a whole family attending at the same time and paying their bills together. So if we go in and bill Isla Fisher, for instance, right click and bill. So let's once again work your way through her particular claim there. Payer, the doctor's correct. If there's an invoice, a request, referral, the right date. Let's just put a good old item 23 in there. But then we come down to, on the left-hand side here, well, let's just add that one in. Left-hand side, we've got the family option. So if you click family, That's again test system. It'll move along to the next person in the family there. So Pete Fisher there. We can add another item in for him. Click add. And so we've created 2 invoices. As you see, it says family invoice 2 up there. We click on quick pay on the right-hand side. And you see the amount it's expecting us to pay is now for those 2 invoices, the $100 there. So you say FPOS, add, and then potential, well, MA online or suppress that stage there. If we do go back into Isla's Fisher's account there, you can see the family account, this is the Isla's personal profile. On the right-hand side, you can see the family set up here. You can add to the family account by clicking on family links here. This will show all of the members of the family here, and you could use either quick add or add member to add extra family members into it. Add member will let you find a patient who's already in ZMed or potentially fill out a whole new patient profile. We're not going to do that for the moment there. There is also the quick sneaky little option down here, quick add, that just lets us quickly put just the patient name and maybe their date of birth in, and it'll automatically be added into the system there. So we could say Jane, for instance, there, and it'll take all of the rest of the details directly from the other accounts that are on the system there. So we'll say add there. She's been quick added as another patient into that family. We'll close that there. So that's the family links section there. You see that Isla Fisher is set up as the primary payer. So she's being the head of the family. So she's automatically on all of those accounts as the primary, as one of the payers. That's usually, that would be a parent, because remember that if there's children below 12 or below, they're not permitted to be billed directly to Medicare without having a guardian listed as their payer. We can also go into the system. Potentially somebody might be they might have a third-party payer. So say, for instance, could be work cover or TAC, or perhaps even a manual claim for a manual Eclipse claim, where you're going to be printing out the claim and posting it to Eclipse. We wouldn't really recommend that, but that's an option we've got there. So let's go into bill here. So once again, you need to select that third-party company up the top here. In this particular case, we do already have one Navy Health Limited there, but if you don't have the third-party company up there, click Add Edit Payer on the right-hand side, Add New, Third Party, select, and this big screen here is really just a search screen where we could type in something like HBA, for instance, if we wanted to link to a new third-party company. But for the moment, we've already got Navy Health Limited on this one here. So we just work our way through the screen again. So we've got the payer, we've got the doctor on it, check the referral if we want one there. On the right-hand side, seeing as this one is going directly to a third-party company, you would probably want to mark this as a corporate invoice style, so not showing the gap. Again, let's put maybe a 104 item in here. For the moment, we're going to pretend, because we don't have all of the items and fees in the system, we're going to pretend this is being charged at the rate of Medibank Private. There we go. So it's always important to check that you've got the right fee in there. We just don't have all the fees loaded in for the moment. You'd add that one in there. Then you'd come down the bottom here, and you'll either print or email out this invoice. It'll just be saved in the system, but yeah, you can print it off and then post it to the particular third-party company, or use the email feature if you know the email address that this particular Navy Health, for instance, requires for there to be sent invoices. I'll show you a bit later on how to receipt that particular claim. For the moment, I'm just going to suppress that one to save it in the system. Okay, now we've also got Eclipse invoices, another kind of invoicing. To do this, you'll generally not be going through the waiting room because it's generally not used with face-to-face appointments. Let's go into the patients here. I'll look up, say, for instance, Paul Hogan, as it is. Once again, on the right-hand side, we need to check that the right payer's there. For Eclipse, we use the patient's own name as the payer. If they're not on that list there of payers, come down to Add underneath that, select Patient, and select, which will add them to that list. Then also for Eclipse, you also need to click on Details here and enter the particular fund, particular health fund that they're connected to there, well, this is their membership number, and UPI is an extra digit that comes after their membership number for some health funds. So this particular one's already set up, linked to Medibank Private. Close that one there. And there's a simple little guide if you're looking at a patient's profile and you want to know whether they're already set up to be using Eclipse. You just look under their name on the right-hand side there, when their name is selected as the payer, that is, and you'll see the health fund selected there. Now remember, it does also require your practice manager to have set up Eclipse within the system, and that also includes that the doctors have been set up as well to bill to each of the health funds that you're likely to be creating invoices in the system for here, like if you're likely to be billing through Eclipse. But we can show you that in a separate training session. Right now, we're just assuming that that's been set up. We've set up the payer there, and we're going to set up an invoice for this particular patient. So this time we'll be heading up to the top of the screen here to do bill. We need to ensure, and we've already ensured, that the patient's name is up the top there. We can double check to see that we've correctly set them up to be using Eclipse, because on the right-hand side here, it'll show the particular fund and the fund type for Eclipse. Going down through the list here, so we've got the doctor set up, we've got the referral. Let's put a particular item in there, 104 for instance. Now remember, we need to ensure that the fee is set up correctly as well. This fee, the private fee for Dr. Costanza, might be relevant if the patient was just paying for themselves, just as a private patient. But seeing as we're now going to be billing through Medibank Private, through Eclipse, you'll need to remember to set the fee to the right fee type for this particular payer. So in this case, Medibank Private will be MPL. If we go down on this list, there we are, Medibank Private, MPL. You'll also need to remember to come into the properties section and set the hospital for that, at least for the first item there. And at the same time, you can set any indication flags that you might need, but the hospital is the vital thing for the Eclipse billing. Just click OK there. And you'll notice as we add that item in there, that any other items that you choose to add will automatically be set to the same fee type, and they will have that hospital attached to each of them there as well. So remember, particularly for Eclipse, seeing as it's a little bit more strict than the others, make sure you've got the right payer set up with the health fund, you've got the right doctor, you've got the right fee there, and you've added the hospital onto it. Then we come down the bottom of the screen there and select Eclipse. It's now going to be saved. Takes us to the Eclipse transmission screen. This is the screen where we'll be sending it directly through to Eclipse. So the most important thing on this screen is you see this section here that's got IMC agreements, schemes, and patient claims. It should always be showing agreements or schemes in that section there. If you ever see it saying patient claims there, that's a sign that the treating doctor hasn't been set up to properly be able to transmit claims to this particular health fund. So usually would recommend, if you see patient claims in that section there, that you would cancel out of this section and cancel out of the invoice and go back to set up the doctor correctly or have a word to your practice manager. As long as it says agreements or schemes, the other two sections are optional there. You can come down to the bottom of the screen here and select send. If there's any big problems, it should mention in the middle. Obviously, in this particular case, we're not fully set up to use Eclipse on our test system here, but normally it should just jug through there and it should say that it's happy and it's transmitted to Eclipse. Your practice manager or somebody specifically designated to look after Eclipse will take it from there. So for the moment, I'll just close that one there. Sure, no, I don't want to print that. Right, another thing we can do with the billing is you may have a surgery where there's a primary doctor who's in the surgery and there was also assisted by another doctor, both of whom need to receive some fees. So if we bill a particular item in here, once again, make sure the pay is set right there. In this particular case, we've got George Costanza as the primary doctor on this surgery. We'll be using the item 30378. So I think what we'll do first, well, you can do a variety of things. You can construct one invoice with the assisting doctor's fees on that, as well as the primary doctor fees, or you can have them in two separate invoices. What we'll do first is we'll do both the primary surgeon's fees and the assisting doctor's fees on the same account, the same invoice. So we'll come down, like we said, we've got the primary surgeon there. Come down, we put the surgical item in here, and we'll click on assist fee here. Now, here's the variety of different options I was talking about. This first option here is the one that we're going to be using. That particular option is where we're constructing one invoice that's going to have both the primary surgeon's fees and the assisting doctor fees on the same invoice. Then the surgeon can send those funds to the assisting doctor subsequent to that. So let's see, the surgeon is George Costanza, as the assisting doctor will pick Jerry Seinfeld, for instance. Assisting item, so this is the amount that the assisting doctor is going to be receiving. You can change the items there. It looks good. Click close, and you see now it's altered the invoice so that it's also got an extra line in there for the assisting doctor's fees. So we've got the surgeon's fees, the 800, and the assisting doctor's fees for the 200. For the moment, instead of quick paying or Eclipse or anything, I'm just going to press suppress. It's just going to save it into the system there. The alternative there is potentially you might want two separate invoices. So let's go and bill again. Once again, we ensure that the primary surgeon is listed under doctor. Let's put the 30378 as a surgical item there and tab across. Come down and click assist fee. This particular time, remember, we wanted two separate invoices. So that's billing as the assisting doctor and then billing as the surgeon. So once again, it's confirming that we've picked the George Costanza as the surgeon. So the assisting doctor, once again, will pick Jerry Seinfeld with the same item fee. So apart from this section at the top, it's exactly the same. Now we'll click close. You notice this time, this specific invoice is the invoice that's just for the assisting doctor. So the section up the top here, it's changed the doctor to Jerry Seinfeld because this is now the assisting doctor invoice. And in the section with the items below, it's zeroed out the surgery fees for this particular item here, and it's included just the assisting doctor's fees on this particular line here. So I'll suppress that one. Yeah, that's fine. You see we've got the second invoice here, which is the billing as the surgeon. You see it doesn't have the assisting doctor's fees on it, but it has the full rate for the surgery there. And I'll suppress that one as well. The third option in there is if you've already billed for the surgeon, or the surgeon's being billed in another practice, you can come into the system here and just do billing for the assisting doctor. So an invoice just for the assisting doctor without needing to do one for the surgeon as well. If you just, this little A symbol here will let us just see assisting doctors on this particular list here. So thankfully all of the ones we got set up there are all assisting doctors as well. So we're picking Jerry Seinfeld. Remember, he's just the assisting doctor. We put the surgery item in, 30378, tab across, coming down, clicking assisting fee again. This time we're doing billing as the assisting doctor. That means we're not needing to do any billing for the surgeon at this stage. We're just doing billing for the assisting doctor. So as it says, the assisting doctor is Jerry Seinfeld. We still need to tell it who the surgeon was. That was George Costanza. And there's the assisting item fee as well. Click close. It's creating just one invoice. Once again, you see it's got the assisting doctor fee on it. It's showing the surgery item there, but the fees for that are zeroed out. I'll just click suppress on that one as well. That's how to do assisting doctor's fees. There's one more item that I want to show you in the invoice section. If we go into bill another thing for Paul McDundee, we're going through, checking all of these things. Part of the way through the item, part of the way through doing the invoice, we might realize that we're not entirely sure about some of the items, or we need to check something, but we want to go other places in our ZMed. We can come down here to the defer item. If we click on defer, that just saves a draft of the invoice in the system. Later down the track, we can, when we come back to bill, it'll give us the option to open up that deferred invoice again. We don't have to work on the deferred invoice if we click no, but we can say yes, and it takes us to just where we were before, and we can change things like these service items and so on. I'll show you a bit later if you need to change everything in the account, how you can do that. I'm just going to cancel out of that one there. Okay, so moving on to receipting. So the most common way we've showed you at the moment for receipting that we've touched on briefly, oh sure, yes, let's take the deferred invoice, has been quick pay. So usually the patient will be right there. Here's the invoice, quick pay. If we go through to the quick pay screen there, let's just do that again. Yep, quick pay, there we go. As we were saying before, up the top, you can choose discounted or gap value. And make sure you always select the method before you put the amount in there, because it doesn't like you changing backwards and forwards between the methods. So let's say FPOS, for instance. If you do have a connected FPOS Tyro terminal, you'll also be able to click on the little ET just next to it there, which will open the Tyro application, which will allow transmission between ZMed and your Tyro terminal. Obviously, we don't have it connected on this system here. So clicking add. Once again, I explained about showing the different amounts of invoices. See, in this particular case, this invoice is only $50. But if you've got patient due an invoice, you see in this particular case, he's got a lot of money due, a lot of debts in the system there. And potentially if he had a whole bunch of family members who owed money in the system as well, you could pick that as well. So for the moment, we'll just go straight back to invoice only, $50 there. Remember, it's a good idea you don't do MA online first, you do you do quick pay first and then MA online after that. For the moment, just in this example, I'm just going to press suppress to make it go away. But if the patient did want to take this particular claim directly themselves to the health fund, post it through, you could do email or print to send them the invoice. Let's see, if past $50. That's what happens when you're chopping and changing. One thing that happens occasionally, particularly when you're doing billing at a different time, so you may have some receipt invoices already built up in the system. So if you come up to account inquiry on the patient's record, sure, let's show the deferred invoices. So there's a variety, on this particular patient, there's a variety of unpaid invoices that have built up over time. You can see at the top of the screen here, the different payers available for this patient. If we switch between them, you can see just the different ones. So the Medicare, the unpaid Medicare, unpaid Medibank Private, and the unpaid personal ones there. You can, of course, also set this to all up the top there with D instead of I for invoice. That's just the deferred claim there. On the right-hand side here at the top of statuses, by default, this screen is just showing us the outstanding, the unpaid invoices. You can change that to one of the other statuses, or just pick all from the top there. You can see that some of these invoices have green ticks on them, indicating that they've been paid. What we can do, so Mick Dundee's turned up later on and is keen to pay some of these. So let's switch it back to, so if they're privately paid ones, we'll pick Paul Hogan there. Maybe we'll pick outstanding on the right-hand side there. Sure, show the default ones. Now, in order for these buttons at the bottom of the screen to light up, you must have one of the payers selected at the top of the screen. So what we'd do is we'd come down the bottom here, and well, we're going to be putting paying off. Let's see. Perhaps those two there, the 200 and the 800. He's wanting to pay those two off. So we'll come down and we'll click on receipt. Pay once again. Pick the particular method first. If POS, for instance, you'll see that ZMed automatically assumes that they're going to pay everything off. It's quite optimistic in that regard. But in this particular case, we're just paying those two invoices. So I'm just going to put 1,000 into the system there. You see you can switch down the bottom between how much the patient owes and how much the family and ZMed owns in general. Now, a very important thing, if you're putting credits into the system like this, putting payments into the system, is to head down and click allocate after that. If you don't actually click allocate, the money will stay hanging around in the system as a credit against his name. So we're going to come down here, pick allocate. So you see this following screen here lets us allocate those funds, the 1,000 we've just put in, to we need to tell it which particular invoices he was paying off. So normally what we'll do is we'll just pick a particular invoice and click fully receipt. You see, fully receipt, receipted off that one there. It's now got the green tick. We were going to do, see, it's showing us we've got 800 left there. We're going to come down here and we're going to receipt this one off as well. Now, if we didn't want to receipt all of the money off, the money was only for some of the services or you know, half of one of the services either, we can double click on these invoice items here, select the individual services that need to be paid, and click on partly receipt. That would let us say, for instance, this particular service here, you can see that it's $800. We could choose to allocate just $400 into that one there. See, we've paid off half of that particular one there. Maybe that $400 was for another service we're going to come back and pay for later on. You see it's got the green tick on the first item there because it's been fully paid off. This one doesn't have the green tick because it's not fully paid off, but and it says there's $400 outstanding on that one there. Close out of that section there. Not allocate. If you do see, normally, if you do see this screen pop up here, it's very important to stop and take note of it. We have a lot of sites who will see that pop up on the screen and not actually read that. That is stressing to you that this person has extra credit just floating around on his account. At the moment, we know that he's got at least $400, well, $462 floating around on his account. You should probably stop at that time and assign it if you know where that credit is supposed to be going, or ask somebody what that credit was supposed to be for. For the moment, I'm going to do the irresponsible thing and click no, because I just want to continue from there. Billing for, so receipting for Medicare, DVA, Tyro, and Eclipse, all of that will be taken care of by your practice manager or a particular person who's been delegated there. We can go into those in some other training sessions. Now, if you do get a payment coming through in the form of a third-party check, that goes in a very different section. So if we close out of this patient record here, say for instance, you remember earlier we had a people billing to Navy Health. So for instance, we can go into management, and debtors, and go into account payers here. So I will type in Navy there. We'll bring up Navy Health. And we head to payment allocation down the bottom left-hand corner of the screen here. Once again, this is a bit like the patient's account inquiry screen. We come up to the top here and do a search on the date range. And there's some unpaid accounts assigned to Navy Health. In this particular case, we're going to be paying off Nicole Kinman and Guy Pearce down the bottom there. Let's come down the bottom of the screen. Receipt, let's see, a check's come through for, see, once again, it's assuming that we're going to be paying everything off, but I'm sorry to disappoint, but we're only going to be paying off $112.15. Add that check into the system there. Once again, you don't just click on cancel, you need to allocate to say which specific invoices we're doing. Allocate. So we're paying off Nicole Kidman, fully receipt, and Guy Pearce, fully receipt there. We can print the receipt there if we want to. And you can see they've disappeared from that screen there. If you come to this screen and despite playing around with the date range there, you can't find the particular patient's invoices on this screen, it's likely that those invoices have been assigned to the wrong third-party payer. We'd recommend that you go back to the patient's account and make sure that they're set to the right payer, and I'll be showing you in just a moment how to reassign that to a different payer. So close out of that section there, cancel. Now we're moving on to the last section here. So adjusting invoices. This would often be used if you build an incorrect item or Medicare rejected some of your items, or you received a different amount for those items. So for this, we'll go into some of the patient's profile. Back into account inquiry. Once again, remember we've got the payer and the outstanding there. Also, we've got the option, while you can double click on some of these items to show more details, you can also click on full details, which expands all of those items in there. Let's just shrink it down for the moment there. So remember, for those options to appear down the bottom, you do need to have only one payer selected up the top. So if you do need to adjust an item that has a green tick on it already, so it's been paid, you will need to come into the payment section and remove the payment before adjusting the item. So if we come down to the payment section, we can see a variety of these green ticks, so fully allocated amounts there. So if we go in here, so what you would normally do if you needed to take the money off and then put it back on again, or you'd made it by mistake, you'd click reversal. Clicking reversal is just to be used for mistakes. So we say, want to reverse it? Yep. And we give a reason. Probably something better than that usually. You'll see it X's it out, and some of the items on the other side are taken away. Some of the green ticks have now gone away. You can also, so when you're wanting to adjust one of these ones, you select the eye line and come down and click on an adjustment down here. There's a variety of different options down the bottom. You notice the first one here, MA same day delete. You can only use that to recall payments or claims that have been sent through using MA Online today. If there was things from yesterday or before, you can't recall them there. You also can't use it with Tyro or can't use it with Eclipse. You can only use it with things that have been sent through using the MA Online button. So when you're adjusting a particular invoice, even though you selected the particular invoice there, let's just open the invoice here, you're not adjusting the invoice itself, you adjust the service items that are on it there. So you see when you select some of them there, you've got a number of options here, bad debt, discount, increase, and void. Let's pick one that hasn't been paid there to use. Service item there. So void you use if you need to cancel out that particular item. If you are cancelling out all of the services in an invoice or the only one, it will also cancel out that invoice. Once again, you've also got the options to discount or increase the value of the service item. Maybe you want to increase the item because the health fund has increased their fees and you hadn't done your fee updates on time, so you didn't put the right amount through, so you could put $50 extra, so just the amount you're increasing it by. Or at the same time, perhaps you need to do discount if you forgot to check the fee type for the particular item and you accidentally billed them at the private rate instead of the health fund rate or the MC rate. So you could reduce it, discount it by $200, for instance, down to $600. Do either of those. Alternatively, you've got this bad debt button here. Now, this bad debt option isn't used very often, but you only use that particular option when you're expecting to get money for this particular item, but you've had to write it off because you're just not going to be able to get it. Do make sure, if you're tempted to use that particular button, do check in with your practice manager and the treating doctor before you do that, because yes, it will show up very differently on the banking reports there. Now, if we exit out of that section there, so you can also do re-invoice if you're wanting to change almost everything about a particular invoice. Now, you can't do that on items that have already had changes to them, like so they've already modified increased the price or voided some of the items. In this case, so increase it, do you want to re-invoice it? And what this is going to do is just create a whole new version of that invoice, and it will completely void the original invoices. So you'll be able to change the payer, the doctor, and so on, add and remove items there, and all sorts of things in that there. Alternatively, if there have already been changes made to the invoice that you're wanting to recreate, you could just completely void out the invoice and create a new one. You've got some extra options there as well. So there's reassign down the bottom here. Reassign is what I was referring to before. If you have the wrong, if you have some of the invoices on the wrong payer. So in this particular case, it's giving us the option to reassign invoices from Paul Hogan to either of the other two account payers we have set up there. So you might say, whoops, we put some of them through as a private rate when they should have been Medibank private. Select those particular invoices and click close to transmit them across. If you select all of the invoices there, it'll say, well, it looks like you're getting rid of this particular payer. Do you still need that particular payer on the account, or do you want us to remove it? Another important thing, if you are reassigning invoices like this, you might want to check, you might need to, in fact, redo the invoices because you've probably billed them at a different fee type. Like if you're transferring them across to Medicare, then maybe they need to be at the Medicare rate, or maybe they need to be at the private billing rate or the health fund rate. So it is important to, if you are reassigning any of those invoices, to check which particular rates you've billed them at. There's one last thing on this one here, is the refunds section here. So it is possible. So we've got reversal and refund. So come through into the payments. So people are tempted when they look at this screen, I believe, to often go to click refund when they've made a mistake. But refunds are very specifically for if the customer has paid a whole heap of credit in advance and they decided they didn't need to use it all in the end. Reversal is very specifically for cancelling a mistake that the receptionist or whatever has made there because you're about to put the money in again. See this particular top item here, so that we only needed 600 of this 1,000 credit we put into the system. So this is the circumstance where we would use refund. We can say, look, you know, 4 weeks ago you put that full 1,000 in, we don't need that full 1,000, we can give the customer 400 back. So we can come down here, click refund, and this knows that it's just going to be refunding that 400 there. So we can refund cash, check, FPOS, so on. And there we go, we refunded that through. So remember, you only do in that the case when you're actually handing money back to the specific, back to the customer. So that's the only circumstance where you do refund, otherwise it's always just referral. So that's brought us to the end of that particular training session there. We've got a few extra little questions here on our PowerPoint. Just move forward to the next one. A quick little quiz that you might consider doing there. You don't actually need to send the answers through to us. We already know the answers. It's just a little quiz based on what we've got already there. I'll leave it up on the screen just for a few moments while you might want to jot down some answers or anything like that. And I'll come back in just a couple of moments and I'll explain the answers. Okay, hopefully folks have had a chance to think through those questions there. So for that first question there, how can I create an invoice for a doctor assisting a surgery? The primary surgeon has been billed elsewhere. Maybe I will quickly show you that section there. That was the assist billing. Close out of here. So remember, this is where we're just billing for an assisting doctor. So this other surgeon, the primary surgeon, has been billed elsewhere. So we can click A there to just show us the available assist doctors. So picking Jerry Seinfeld from there, keeping the referral there, putting the surgery item in, 30378, clicking assist fee, and then just picking this middle option here, billing as the assist doctor. The first option and the last option are both options that we're going to be using if we're billing for the primary doctor right now. So that was the first one there. The next question was, I've received a check from HBA to pay for the three claims posted to them. Where do I add this? And remember that you go into the management section, debtors, account payers, look up that third-party payer, and go down to the payment allocation section. Put a payment in and remember to allocate it. Of course, if you need to see the invoices ahead, just click on Go up the top there. So when can I use the same day delete option on an invoice? Now, I was a bit sneaky when I put that question in because the button itself actually gives you more of the answer. The button itself says MA same day delete. So you can only do that particular option, obviously, when it's the same day. It's not past midnight yet, and hopefully not working that late. And it's been sent through specifically by MA Online. Remember, not Tyro and not Eclipse. For either of those, you have to contact Medicare directly. And again, what should you do whenever a patient arrives to assist with billing later? Head back to the screen again there. So the patient's arrived. Let's see. Yeah, maybe it's Mel Gibson. Remember to hit the online PV or the DVA PV down the bottom to do the patient verification, to check their Medicare card, and also check their health fund if they're an Eclipse payer. Now we got some questions have come through here. So the referral on the patient there, so if when we're doing a billing here, let's see, that person didn't have one. I know he does. No. So you pick the particular referral here. That's the incoming referral to you. So this is the referral that is being used by the patient to come and see the treating doctor here. So you want to select that one on the particular account there when you're doing the billing for this patient. Obviously, you can make sure, if we rewind a little bit here, the referrals are maintained on this right-hand section of the patient's profile. This is where you can look at details of the specific referral, or you can click Add here to add new referrals in. Okay, so let's just pop back there. I hope you've had a great time with this Lunch and Learn today. As we see on the screen here, please remember to each week to register for all future Lunch and Learn webinars and go to our website, check more details there. We are recording all of these sessions and we'll put them up on our website. And please email any feedback to implementation@zmed.com.au. To contact us in other ways, here's some other resources. So you can log into the ZMed website, or you can even use that green help button up the top of the ZMed website. There's the support help desk. and even after hours support. But in particular, here's the important details. Email support@zmed.com.au or phone 1300 933 000. Thanks a lot, and see you next week.